A pleasure to meet all at last, and here we are at it again with TV shows that deserve the spotlight. For this one, I'm sure that some people out there whom are hardcore Nickelodeon fans might be aware of the super genius boy whom has thwarted a huge alien invasion back in 2001. Pretty much piecing Nickelodeon's first ever CG related movie, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. Knowing the Nostalgia Critic talked about it less than a year ago now, it really is worth talking about today. But what I'm going to do here is about the animated series that followed in suit of its success. Beginning in 2002, Jimmy Neutron, the series, which is in a way like the critical success of Godzilla, revolving into Godzilla the series as an animated continuation of the story to the movie, pretty much. This technically does a similar thing to it, but mainly like with the real Ghostbusters, it also invents a whole lot of new adventures for our favorite Nickelodeon boy genius to explore. Voiced by the one and only Debbie Derryberry, again. So, yeah, and that itself is quite a name, but she's been the official voice since '01. And I can sure tell you right now, in the show, she not only gives Jimmy Neutron many new levels of emotion, ideas, and other different arcs for the character to explore. Her voice acting, though, technically is one of the lesser feats of the whole thing, because the show itself isn't just about Jimmy Neutron himself, but it's also about the various other characters that are there, like Sheen, Carl, and we definitely can't forget Cindy. Jimmy's supposed rival, in a way. One whom is jealous of him, but also envious of his work. His super genius technically does make her seem like a laughingstock, until the many times where she teases him and technically outwits him in varying ways. Like there is this one moment in one episode where Jimmy unfortunately would earn 8th place in the competition of best inventions, while Cindy scored the first prize. And then there was another point in time where Jimmy and Cindy unfortunately end up on an uncharted island, and they're forced to banter from time to time, while also attempting to find a way to survive. And that whole episode's a huge can of beans, worth exploring, but I guess what we'll just do is stick to the typical format that I've been doing here in the series and marathoning through all the episodes in a quick and precise manner. So I guess now we have that covered. If there's one other thing that I really want to highlight, it's the intro. It uses a lot of stock footage and clips from the movie, while also technically having it rendered in the same exact type of graphical format as the show itself. After all, comparing a show to a movie, camera work's not necessarily the same. And we could certainly expect this, being that it's a bit of a smaller budget compared to the movie. The show did technically have itself a bit of a cheap feel surrounding it, and the animation by today's standards is not great. But CG did technically have some limitations to it back in the day. And knowing that we probably won't really get any more Jimmy Neutron related movies and shows nowadays, it really makes this an interesting find. Knowing the fact that it actually lasted for 6 long years, a lot of seasons and episodes, worthy of talking about. As I've mentioned before, there are plenty of moments where a lot of the characters pretty much come together and go along with their daily lives, having to go through school every single day, Jimmy having new inventions and new ideas that can hopefully change the world. And there's the part where we got Sheen Estevez being a total goofball and boasting about Ultra Lord. And of course, you know, speaking of Sheen Estevez, holy crap. He had his own spin-off series, Planet Sheen. Is it worth talking about though nowadays? Or is it just a fad because people hated it back then and it had no reason to resurface today? So is it like Fred Figglehorn, Make Me Bad 35? All the Bill Cosby and Jeffrey Jones and Jared Fogle material? Oh man, I guess I'm diving too far into the controversial rabbit hole. But that's just the thing though. Did Jimmy Neutron technically get itself killed? The franchise itself ended up in a whole can of worms that never got opened? Nowadays, is this pretty much what it is? Did Planet Sheen truly kill Jimmy Neutron? I guess that's a question that I really want answers for. So, you know what to do down there in that section. Just let me know if anything has truly come up on that part. Or if Jimmy Neutron could be making a comeback. I guess I'd have yet to find out about that. But apart from all that, you know, the characters are still impressive, in tune and in line with their original selves, as they were once again voiced by their original cast members, just as the movie itself had done. Knowing that this immediately ran after the movie's critical and financial success, both in theaters and in home releases on VHS as well as DVD, and knowing today that you can pretty much buy or rent it digitally, it just means that more people are willing to, in fact, watch this for whatever reason. But Jimmy Neutron, the series, I can't quite really figure out why people don't put as much attention or thought into this as much as the movie. I could probably only speculate it only did so well. And for the most part, the whole series itself did have some moments that seemed boring, some that seemed counterintuitive, some moments that felt depressing, meme-worthy. Yeah, you know, speaking of memes, I can consider that the show actually did have the most meme material that persists to this very day. Jimmy Neutron in the form of memes has certainly become quite a big hit, in the same way as with almost everything else. So I really wonder, how exactly would it play out today? Would a Jimmy Neutron reboot series be necessary? Could we possibly have more with the franchise at some point? I can't really tell for sure if that ever could happen. I suppose Nickelodeon would have yet to come up with that sort of idea. Though when you really get down to it, since they have been making more live action films, you think maybe now would be a good time to start looking into other franchises, like Jimmy Neutron, for instance? I mean, they have live action SpongeBob, live action Dora the Explorer, live action, Lazy Town. Even though that was mostly a show, I can't really be sure if a movie would be needed though. Especially with what happened with, well, you know, right? But hey, you know what? We definitely had a fun time with Nickelodeon between the 2000s and the 2010s. A huge era may have come and gone, but knowing that we're now about to enter a pretty big retribution, especially since SpongeBob has once again managed to really uplift everybody's spirits, I really cannot imagine that Nickelodeon might actually try their hand at a Jimmy Neutron live-action film in the same way they were actually able to do a decent job with the Dora the Explorer film. Some people hated it even before it was released. I actually enjoyed it. So much so I even gave it my own review. 2 years later, but still. As for Jimmy Neutron now, it's still a good series. It might not necessarily be worthy to watch through all the episodes, but there's still a good selection out there that I've had lots of fond memories of over the years. And when I've watched those episodes, I take a nice step back into a period in history that Nickelodeon once occupied and was able to shift our heads towards its direction. While Disney, Universal, DreamWorks, and other such animated companies out there, even Illumination and Blue Sky, would take a little break just to know that they had their own competitor. Nickelodeon was trying their hand at CG in the same way that everybody else was at that time, so it did make sense at that point, just to see how well it would work out. While it wasn't a great run, Jimmy Neutron, as the movie and the show, and even with the very last entry of true Jimmy Neutron related media on TV or elsewhere, was a Chrysler Town and Country minivan commercial in 2008, several months after the show came to an end in 2007. So this was the true ending to the franchise, even though Planet Sheen would technically make its own entry as well. As I've said before though, I do not know what truly happened. Why was the series truly discontinued and they never even thought about bringing it back for some odd reason? I really do want to know at this point what went wrong at that time. Other than that though, this is pretty much what I have to say about it. And I'm sure that with other shows that I'll talk about as well, do expect me to have lots to say about certain franchises or otherwise.